Welcome to Mother of Mammals podcast. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, a friend of mine who is a fellow parent, consciously making an effort to raise her child with humanity for all. So, I'd like to introduce Magdalena. Hi, Magdalena.
Hello, Bria. What an honor. Thank you for having me on here. I'm so excited to spend some time with you.
Brilliant. I kind of, when the subject came to mind, I thought that you are the one that I want to talk to on this. So today we're here to discuss how we speak to our children about the current situation in the world of genocide.
Mm-hmm.
I find that if people get an idea that I actually discuss these things with my children, I think in their head, they just picture me sitting there putting loads of like horror stories in these tiny, tiny little minds. And it's really not like that.
I get that so much. People picture, sitting in front of the news channels and discussing that or showing some horrific images, but it could not be further from truth because we discuss things about daily life, and me avoiding this subject will not protect my toddler from this coming up in conversations, be it at school, in the playground with other people.
So definitely. And I think what I find is that what we both do is make sure that our children are aware of even just what's going on in the home environment. And I know personally with me, they're going to be picking up on certain things because the reality of it is that I might be sitting in the corner scrolling on my phone and, watching the most horrific images of children and families coming out of Palestine, and then looking up and seeing my beautiful children peacefully and happily playing. But there is going to be something in my energy that shifts. And I find like even with my 9-year-old, so I mentioned I have a 9-year-old and I have a 2-year-old, that he might just catch me just like gazing out into the distance and he'll ask if I'm okay. And so for me, it's quite important for me to just not pretend that everything that is going on in our family home is okay, even though it's coming in like via my phone, but just to be aware of their feelings.
Absolutely. I find that my toddler will always pick up on things. Even if I put the phone down, I still have the energy around me. I saw something horrific. I put the phone down and I connect with him. And he will just come up and say, I love you. He doesn't always do that, but he does this when he notices my energy because he's a smart human being and picks up on my energy. Exactly what you say. No matter how you might want to hide it, you won't, because your children will pick up on it. So we do have conversations, normal, natural conversation. I don't sit him down and say, listen, son, this is happening in the world. I simply say, oh, yeah, I'm not buying this and that product. And he will ask me why. And I will explain, oh, because I want to support Palestinians, or if it's about something else, because I don't want to add to the crisis in Congo, let's say. He knows about that as well. So we discuss all those places in the world. He's a fan of geography, so that makes it easier. When I refer to a place, he will have a rough idea where it is. And I will say why I'm doing something. And naturally, he asks for more information. Why is that? Why are people suffering? Why is the government or XYZ entity doing this? Why? Yeah,
Yeah.
being empathetic child, he will want that information.
Mm. And I think that's a really good point. It's about raising empathetic children. I know, like on the subject of boycotting, which is how my 9-year-old is able to have the biggest impact, like just factually, and also for him to be able to feel proud of himself. He actually gets his pocket money monthly. So I will provide his basic needs, his food, travel, things like that. But he's responsible for buying a lot of the other things. So if he wants something like a drink or a chocolate or some crisps or something, it's his responsibility to buy them. Um, I think we started before we started the pocket money and I was buying things. I would say to him, I don't think that we should buy these certain brands. Before entering into those conversations with him, I'd like to point out what he was already equipped with. Like he knows what death is. And he knows what death is because we, as a family, we've had people dying around us. So he knows the reality of that. He knows what, murder and killing is just from like general day to day. Like his father is a meat eater and will kill animals to eat them. So he's actually seen it and been part of that. He knows what war is. He knows what armies are. And so I've never really had to explain these things to him. But when it comes down to boycotting, whether it's, say, things you eat or things you watch or clothes that you put on your back, the way that I have explained it to him is that this money that we have in our hands, when we give it to this company, then they use that to buy weapons to harm and kill people. Give him that quite a basic, direct fact. And he quite easily at 9 understands that. So when it comes to how he chooses to spend his money, like his conscience just kicks in. He doesn't want to do it. And that is having an effect. Like sometimes we see the realities of the boycotts, like certain businesses going bankrupt and having to close branches. And then I'm able to show him that. And I can say, like, you played your part in that. And it fills him with pride.
Amazing. We're very similar in that respect. Although I will just perhaps note that we lead privileged life. We have home, shelter, safety, food, and so on. And I try to make him aware of it gently and age appropriate. And when we start those conversations, I try to, before we get to the boycotting part, when he asks, I try to, first of all, speak about various people, nationalities, ethnicities, indigenous people, speak in terms that reflect our values and speak about their dignity and centering their daily life before we get to the part that, where we discuss violence, war. And he's very good with naturally leading those conversations because he will ask questions when we read about Palestine, for example, when we read about the olive harvest, he will see how the daily life is when it's not affected by genocide. And that is his foundation, let's say. I tried to start it from that viewpoint. So he doesn't have that image of people when we discuss genocide. He doesn't have that image of people as victims. But the strong sense that they deserve their lands, they deserve to live they deserve dignity, they deserve food, shelter, and all the basic human rights that we so often take for granted.
Yeah, it's very important to celebrate who people who people are, I find like that comes really natural for us because here there's certain parts of the year, like around Easter, where it's like a huge tradition to do kite flying. And it's not just about the flying the kites, it's the making the kites, it's the going out into nature and sourcing the materials that you need for the kites. And I remember about 10 years ago, the children's father, younger siblings would just be obsessed with kite flying and just they couldn't focus on anything else apart from getting out there and flying kites. And I remember looking up on the internet and showing them the people of Gaza beating the world record with their kite flying, which is just it's such an amazing sight. But it's really a way for us to be able to connect as cultures to say, like, this thing that is so important to us is also important to them. And then discussing, like, so here we would go out and we'd find some sticks from the tree or bits of bamboo to make the frame. And then you would go and find like certain berries off the tree, which then would be used to glue the plastic that you like. So we're able to discuss. I wonder what they use. I wonder what type of trees they use. I wonder what they use for glue. Yeah. And then we can go out and we can fly the kite. And the last couple of years, when we've done that, the reality of flying kites is that you're in an open air situation. The breeze is really flowing and you're taking those deep breaths, you're in nature, you're there amongst it, and you have that concentration of getting this kite up. And I think it's like then such a good time whilst you're taking those deep breaths and you feel really calm and you feel really excited to remember people feeling those things. They're not just people who just feel fear, but they would have felt that. They would have felt that extreme joy.
What a beautiful point, that connection. And when we discuss those issues, this is not absolutely the first thing that people think about. The thing we mentioned at the beginning when we discuss, I talk about those things and politics with my child because it pertains to life and all aspects of it. And he's a birth worker's child anyway. So like your children, he is familiar with death and birth, age appropriate. So when we discuss those things, I speak clearly. I speak in simple terms. I try to give examples, real life examples. And of course, I don't show him the violence on the screen. I say about the things that are happening. For example, children and families are being killed. Any toddler will understand that. They understand those terms.
And it's important to protect them. I know that, for instance, when I was showing them the videos of the kite flying, I think I probably use YouTube as my source. Given the situation, what I will do is I will think I'm going to look for this thing that I want to show them. I will find it and I will download it. Because even just typing things in the internet, you don't know what the algorithms are suddenly going to then come up with. And my son has a tablet. So I also make sure that I do it on my device because I don't want the algorithms on his tablet to be understanding certain things.
Mm-hmm. I very much understand this. This is very similar to what we do. When I do this, I try to find something and it's on my phone. And my toddler doesn't have access to my phone otherwise. So it's what I show him on the screen that day or a book we read or something we discuss. But it's never graphic images because it would simply be too much for a young child. I'm very careful.
Yeah.
But they do discuss those things with friends at school. They do discuss conflicts and war and genocide.
Like within the school day or within the playground? Right.
Within the school, they do discuss various historical events too. So they discuss that, and amongst themselves, they discuss daily life in the playground.
Mm. Yeah, I found like I was at the beach with my son, and I had brought two of his classmates, his friends, and so I was the parent responsible for these children. And there was a fast food wrapper on the floor, and my son clocked that, and he said, "Oh, that's a bad company. It's a bad company." And he said, "Do you think my friends know that?" And I said, "I don't know. You could ask them." And a lot of the time he likes me to speak for him. And he said, "No, you tell them. You tell them about what Israel do." And I said to him, I I don't think this is my place to do that. I can't do that. But I think you can explain to your friends what you think. Because I was very aware that me being responsible for these children and not knowing what the parents' thoughts on what they're willing to share with these children, it was not my place to discuss these things. And he did. Eventually he went up to them and he said, like that fast food joint is really bad. And the conversation went on to them, the three of them having a talk about why it was bad. Genocide didn't come up. It just in general,
Mhm.
right? Don't even need a genocide to discuss why these companies are so bad. But they were able to like have a really important conversation between them, and his friends were open to it and he was open to sharing. And yeah, I think when you give them the skills of conversation and thinking in depthly about these things, then yeah, it goes out and it spreads amongst them.
I love that. The daily, discussing daily choices. This is what they're able to understand. And when my toddler asks me about what can we do, Mama, we discuss those things and naturally he's worried. He's asking how can we help? And I say, this is what we do in our daily lives. We can avoid certain products and avoid certain companies that directly or indirectly support the genocidal parties. And he remembers that well, and he's super outgoing, so he will challenge the whole shop out loud. He will, any of my friends who walk through the door will be quizzed on, have you downloaded the boycott app yet?
Yeah.
Wait, it is called boycott. They will be literally pinned to the wall and quizzed. But my son,
I think it's such an important point because as children, like what control do they really have over anything? So, okay, their money is our money. So even that comes from us. But the way that I see it a lot of the time, it's I'm raising this person to stand for humanity because they're not going to be 2 and 9 forever. They are going to grow up and they are going to be the adults of of the world making these decisions. And I have to say, I I pride myself on the fact that I say my children can be whoever they want to be. I'm thrilled to watch them grow and discover life on their terms. And I will support them in any way that I can. But honestly, Magdalena, I would be ashamed if he didn't, but both of them didn't grow up and stand for humanity. I feel like that to me is a basic need. I need you to be that. Like not just certain people at certain times. And maybe, yes, you don't leap into every situation. You have to kind of judge it. But I need you to be in this world as a decent human being, because that's not a given. It's really not.
It's not, but you're doing it already because you're modeling conscious choices and you're teaching them to ask the question, why? And that is the most important lesson. The way you live, everyday choices is already sending a signal and preparing them for this.
It really
I
is.
think it's the really the only way to teach through our daily choices and our values that we
Yes.
have in daily life.
Yeah. You mentioned before acknowledging your privilege.
Mm.
And I acknowledge our privilege as well, but also I find when discussing with the children, rewriting what I think privilege is,
Mhm.
I've always had to explain to him what it does take for me to be a stay-at-home mum. And for instance, like the school that he goes to, I think the majority of people, they're a lot better financially off than we are.
Mhm.
So the children get to like do things and have things constantly. So for instance, we'll go to the beach and I'm like, we need to take our sandwiches, we'll pop some popcorn, we'll mix our juice and we'll take it in the flask. And when we get there, it can be like, oh, I want to go to the shop and I want to get this and I want to get that, because that's also what the other children are doing. And explaining to him that, well, the parent kind of have to work to be able to provide that. So we do have choices. Like I could go out and I could work and I could have less time to spend with you, less time at the beach. Or we could do it like this. When you come home, you can just chill and relax, like with us, or you could go to an after school club, or you could go to a childminders, you could do all this stuff. And from what is considered maybe a privilege to be able to have these materialistic things, I turn around with him and I kind of explain to him, your privilege is within our family and us being present. And it means that we can't have these other things. And then I find like something that he understands, because he knows London quite well. And when they've got like the demonstrations in London and you can find images and footage and it's like this bird's eye view looking down and it's just like scenes of people, like just like it just looks never
Mhm.
ending. And I'll show him and I'm just like, that's amazing. You see all these people, they came out, they stand for humanity. They care. They've got on trains, they've got on buses, they've walked, they've done all this stuff. They've made their signs. Wow, look at that sign. Isn't it beautiful? These people are incredible. And you know what? By us kind of like not buying that drink, by us having these conversations, we're part of that. We might not be physically there, but we are so privileged to be part of that community. And I think it really has highlighted like how amazing people are. Yes, you've got, your other people that just choose to stay silent, and you don't need to waste too much time discussing them because they do what they do and they're not us. But for him to understand the privilege that he belongs to this
Mhm.
is incredible.
I have to say there was a time at the beginning when my son was asking a lot, you know, about what can we do? And I enumerate all those things we do, sustainable things for us, given our resources, energy, capabilities, and so on. And he wanted to do more and more and more. But Mama, what else can we do? And there was, a time I had to speak to him, with him, and say, son, we cannot do this alone. We cannot prevent all this on our own. This cannot be only on our shoulders. It's impossible because we would not be able to achieve anything on our own. And the most important thing we can do is what you're already doing. You're speaking to friends, you're speaking to my friends, because he does challenge my friends. We do the boycotting, we do other things. And an important part of it is being in the community. And we had to have many conversations for this to sink in. He wanted to almost for me to say, yes, we will do more. But at that point, we couldn't. We simply couldn't. It was beyond us for many reasons.
Yeah.
And he struggled with that idea, that we cannot drop everything, literally drop
Yeah.
everything and do more, and why and how come. But he got there, and I think this is very valuable because we did speak to many of my friends and family, and he does speak even in public places. We will go out and he wants a strawberry shake. A man in a cafe asked him, it was an independent cafe, but still he asked, what do you want? Which flavor do you want? And he went, well, I don't want such and such brand because in imports is and I don't want to give them my money. And
Yeah.
just look for the cafe and see, what's the reaction. I want my son to be also safe. We had warm reception on all the occasions.
Yeah. I think this is the thing as well, is like you do look around and you look for people's reactions. And that's a part of how we protect them as parents. Because sometimes the reaction isn't good. And then you have to like really acknowledge like that time and place and not put yourself or your child back into that situation. Because I think being around people who do not stand for the same things that you're standing for, it can be so emotionally draining. It feels like it is no longer an option.
And physically, we haven't experienced that, but physically it might be dangerous because if people hear that, they might disagree, fair enough, and walk away, but there will be some who will react with violence, whether verbal or physical, and neither are okay, especially in the presence of a child. So we do check and we do have those discussions, but my son is very talkative and outgoing. He will talk to everyone and everyone in all the spaces. I have to be very careful about that. But he does enjoy that. And he does create that connection well, and it is in his nature.
Yeah. It's important. It is important for us to protect them, but also at the same time protecting their moral compass. And, it can be difficult, but I think we get a balance with it.
Yep.
I know, like with my 2-year-old, on her first birthday, we had a day planned. We were going to go out and do something nice that day. And on her birthday, a global strike was called. And I thought, okay, well, we can't go out. Like, we can't spend anything. So we can't, get public transport to wherever we were going to go to, pay entrance fee to wherever we were going to go to. And I thought, well, that's not a problem. We're in walking distance to the nice beach. We'll just make our picnic and we'll go down there and we'll have a lovely day still. And then on the actual day, I went to make our birthday cake and realized that we had no eggs. And I couldn't make this cake. And I thought, well, I'm not going to go to the shop to make a cake. So she didn't have a first birthday cake. Instead, she had ice cream in a cone with a candle in. And we have some lovely pictures of us just sitting at home, singing happy birthday. And, she's got her cone with the candle in. And I feel so proud that she will always be able to look back and say, that was my first birthday. I did not have a cake. And this is the reason why.
Amazing.
Like, and even like Mother's Day, which is just passed here, usually celebrations like that, we're quite homebodies. We spend a lot of time at home, but we'd maybe just do something nice, and we'd usually get like a takeout delivered as like that treat. And I said to my son, I said, that the people in Palestine have got no food. And I'm really worried about this. And we do have food. We have food in the fridge that we could cook. So as a breastfeeding mother, I said to him, I think that money that we would spend on a takeaway, we can donate that to the breastfeeding support. Is it Gina?
Gaslight
Yeah,
and Nutrition Alliance.
yeah. And like, he was absolutely fine about that, even though like he was psyching himself up for like 2 weeks to be getting this takeaway pizza or Mother's Day. It was, yes, fine. Like, no problem with that.
Amazing.
And it's just those little things that they can do and show them how, yes, it does take sacrifice. That thing that you wanted, you give up. It's not necessarily like, oh, when I've got free time or when I have nothing else to do that I could do this. It's like, actually, no, you have to go out of your way and you have to give up things that you do want. And it is about protecting your moral compass.
We had several of those situations when my son wanted something and didn't know it was by a company that we were boycotting. And I did say, oh, we're boycotting this company because of, mostly it's because of Palestine. So we're boycotting this for Palestine. Do you still want to get it? And he goes, no. He's a bit younger, but he will, yes, he will express the disappointment, but he will not want to buy that thing, which I think is pretty amazing. I often think in those situations, how is that a 5-year-old has got more integrity than most adults in the current parliament? How is that?
That brings me to another question. So here at Mother of Mammals, I'm not just interested in what you think, but why you think it. And personally, I find within this situation and watching the genocide being live streamed by the Palestinians, I can feel what my ancestors would have been put through. Whereas before, it was always like, I would have read the books and read accounts, but it didn't quite hit home. But now I'm really seeing the reality of what that would have been. So I was wondering if there was anything in your ancestry that makes this really hit home for you, to mean that you really cannot turn away from this.
Yes, very much. So historically, my motherland, Poland, has been invaded by Western and Eastern countries. And my parents are the first generation who did not have to be forcibly resettled or flee from war or be detained or sentenced to Gulag and so on. So it really is fresh in the ancestry, if you look at this from that point of view. Another reason, a strong reason for me, is that I'm a birth worker and I need to and want to be safe for all people, no matter their background. it was really important to educate myself on anti-colonialism and start my anti-racist work. And I've really only done this since the Black Lives Matter movement, when I started to notice it, read it, and get curious also as my discomfort. And, it's going to be a lifelong education, but I want to continue. I need to continue for the sake of my son, of the reality I want him to live in, and for the people I serve. I want to be a safe person.
Yeah, I think that's so important as a birth worker. Like, I'm not a birth worker, but I have used birth workers. And I think the danger is when people don't do the work, is that people can find out that these people are not safe spaces for them at the time where you need them to be. So it really is about how people show up in the world daily to maybe decide whether you're the right person for them.
Absolutely. And I think it's my personal belief that humanity and integrity always has to come first.
Yeah. And you very much act on that, not just words, because I find that people like to use these words as an assumption, like, oh, of course I stand for everyone, but don't actually do anything in their lives to make that happen or make that the case.
It becomes easier. It becomes easier.
Yeah, it does. Because what's the other option?
Well, the other option is burnout and, checking out. That's the alternative. Because this
Yeah.
kind of, speaking on a wider scale, it is a lonely work. People either think you're crazy or are hippie or just naive.
I think it's a very much a word of a warning to you when people think that about you.
Absolutely.
And it's whether you're going to be around them. And as you say, yes, it can be a lonely place, but it does not have to be. It really doesn't. I think just by entering into the conversation, you could suddenly be swarmed with a community. Like, it's out there, and it's really not hard. It's not hard to find it. Literally, people are shouting this out. Come and be part of this. Come and be part of the community. It's not difficult.
Yeah, it's finding your people. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if sometimes that means, saying goodbye to friendships and some of the family in real life.
You and yeah, I hope that for our children that they find their people.
Yeah, and that they have the boundaries and that they always really question things. That's the important thing. When someone says, you can be comfortable, but at the cost of someone else, I want them to think, why? Is that true? What is that person saying? And ask again, why and why and why, until they get their answer and they know the answer is within them. Their body will tell them whether it feels right or not, and they can act accordingly and have the courage to do that.
Definitely. So on that note, I would like to say thank you so much for joining me, Magdalena.
Thank you.
All right. Free Congo, free Palestine, and free Sudan.
Free Palestine and free Congo, free Sudan, and free all other places who are currently going through genocide. Everybody deserves their human rights. It's a necessity.
So thank you for joining me, Magdalena, and thank you for being part of my
Thank
community.
you
I
so much,
appreciate
Priya.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed it. If you could take a moment to write a review, it would be much appreciated, and hit the follow button to make sure that the podcasts come directly to you. If you would like to connect with Birthwork Magdalena, from Powering Birth. You can find her information in the episode notes. Magdalena has also put together a reading list of books that she reads with her toddler. The boycotting app that we mentioned is called Boycat, and the breastfeeding support is called Gaza Infant Nutrition Alliance. I hope that you're able to check them all out.